What are you interested in? Chances are, whatever it is, China is a problem. I mean, I don't think carbon dioxide is pollution, but environmental extremists do. Well, China is by far the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, and it's adding 2 or 3 coal-fired power plants every week. And then there's real pollution: dirty air, dirty water, dirty soil, the weird story of thousands of dead pigs dumped in a river. I mean, it's just never-ending gross over there. According to the World Bank, 16 out of the world's 20 most polluted cities are in China. Pollution is one of the top reasons for riots in China. Literally tens of thousands of individual riots across the country every year. And we don't even hear about most of them because of their lack of a free press. I mean, take this massive oil spill in Dalian, China. It's as big as the Exxon Valdez oil spill, which is a household phrase, but I bet you've never heard of the Dalian oil spill before. You can't even blame this on Chinese censorship. This is one of the cases where the news actually came out. It's just that our Western media prefers to focus on tiny environmental problems in Canada and the U.S. rather than major environmental problems in China. But that's just the environment. I mean, human rights is a major problem in China, too. I'm not just talking about Tiananmen Square, where pro-democracy students in Beijing were slaughtered, literally rolled over by tanks for daring to want freedom. I'm not just talking about the bizarre and bigoted persecution of the Falun Gong, a peaceful sect that was once officially endorsed by the Chinese government, but then the communists panicked when the Falun Gong grew too numerous. Credible reports, including by former Canadian MP David Kilgour, say that Falun Gong prisoners and other political prisoners have had their bodies' organs surgically removed from them while they were alive to feed China's booming private organ donation trade. And then there's the massive wholesale oppression of entire ethnic regions of China. The dominant ethnic group in China, of course, are the Han Chinese, but there are more than a dozen other ethnicities, from Uyghur Muslims to Tibetans. Well, all of them are suppressed violently if need be. Millions of Han Chinese are shipped in to colonize and Hanify, if you will, traditionally ethnic territories like Tibet itself. And then there's the obvious. There is no political freedom in China, no multi-party democracy, no right to vote, no independent courts, no freedom to dissent. If you even give the middle finger to a Chinese building, like artist Ai Weiwei did, you'll be arrested, let alone trying something like organizing politically or even religiously. There's a thirst for meaning in China, a country where Mao Zedong tried to raise everything down to zero, literally destroying millions of works of art, books, even musical instruments during what he called the Cultural Revolution. Mao even toyed with the idea, I know this sounds crazy, of replacing people's names with numbers. He even envisioned a future where we would live underground like ants. He was truly evil and a destroyer of men and ideas. Well, imagine the thirst of a country who lived under him, well, those who survived him, to find true meaning afterwards, and love and peace, and to relearn what it means to be a human. The Chinese government is even more afraid of Christianity than they are of the Falun Gong, so they've set up a fake church system of their own, whose bishops are appointed by the Chinese Communist Party. Now, according to official Chinese propaganda, there are only about 10 million Christians in the whole country of 1.2 billion people. But despite that, there are actually millions of illicit house churches, and independent estimates put the real number of Christians at close to 100 million. But like the Falun Gong, they have to hide from the state. Well, don't get me started on the war on women over there. See, China's one-child policy was abominable to begin with, anti-human, barbaric, anti-civilization. It'll surely go down in history as one of the greatest crimes against humanity, and it was perpetrated on China by China itself. According to the Chinese Health Ministry, since the one-child policy began in 1971, the state has conducted 336 million abortions, plus 196 million forced sterilizations. 336 million? That's more than the entire population of the United States. Of course, faced with such barbaric choices, Chinese families sometimes simply made girl children disappear in favor of boys. I mean, boys would grow up stronger, could work on the farm, could earn a better living. So as a consequence of the one-child policy, Chinese couples actually abandoned or actually killed baby girls so they could try again for a boy baby. I feel sick just saying these words, but that's what happened. And in modern times, medical science has allowed parents to learn the sex of their baby in utero so they could abort girls. Now, after 2 generations of doing this, there are now 34 million more men in China than women. I think the number is probably higher than that. That's how much female infanticide happened. And the law of abortion continues on the books. That's China's war against itself. But wars against other countries too. Not just ex-countries that it absorbed, like Tibet and Mongolia, but other countries that it has effectively colonized, like North Korea, and even countries far away, like Sudan, and in fact, much of dictatorial Africa, where China wrings out natural resources and in return sells those dictators weapons so they can stay in power. It's no coincidence that China is both Sudan's protector at the UN and its largest producer and consumer of oil and its largest weapons dealer. I mean, cookie cutter that story around the world. And where China doesn't buy off a regime, it might threaten it, like the current fight over a handful of tiny islands between Japan and China called the Senkaku Islands. It's threatening war against Japan, not very subtly. Same thing with Vietnam, which doesn't want to be the obedient colony it was in the past. And, you know, they're not even afraid to force U.S. military aircraft to land. Back in 2001, a Chinese fighter jet literally pushed a U.S. airplane in mid-flight, colliding with it, endangering it, and forcing it to land in China, where its crew was detained. That's what they were getting away with a dozen years ago. Now, China is as high-tech as any NATO nation, spending over $100 billion a year on its armed forces, second only to the United States in the whole world. China even has themselves an aircraft carrier now. It used to be called the Varyag when the Soviets started building it. Then it was sold to China. China said they wanted to turn it into a floating casino. Yeah, that's the ticket, a floating casino. Well, check out that floating casino now. It's China's new ship called the Liaoning. That's them practicing landing a latest generation fighter jet on it last year. What? Who are you? Who are you? What? You're Da Mao? One of the pandas that our prime minister personally negotiated for with the Chinese, that we're paying millions of dollars for, Da Mao? That means big cat, but it sounds like big Chairman Mao, doesn't it? Oh, no problem. That's okay because you're so cute and I'm a bit of a furry. Oh, don't worry. We'll take good care of you, big boy. We won't ask you to be forcibly sterilized. No, the opposite. We want you to have as many babies as you can. We'll feed you as much as we can. No starving for you. We'll take good care of you, Da Mao. Hey, China, no worries. All that bad stuff, don't worry about it. Because pandas.